Okay, I think Joe is currently figuring out his because I can't hear him talk. He's currently figuring out his sound. All right, so for those who don't know, obviously this is a new setup. Brad Ward obviously took an opportunity to go elsewhere, and as a result, that opened up an opportunity. So I've known Joe for basically 25 years, talking Browns and everything else. He's been working in radio in South Florida, still in South Florida, trying to move back to Ohio. So, when I came to the OBR, I had already had a pre-existing podcast, as some of you know. So I was Brad and I were sort of put together on a show, and it worked out really well because I arrived in October of the 2023 season. The Browns took off, and we sort of started rolling with the idea that playoff, right ahead of the playoffs, we put together a bunch of extra shows and just made it into a show. No, I cannot hear you. And so it sort of worked out and became the React, and we sort of rolled from there. So 22 months later, this became an opportunity. And when, Brad informed the OBR he was leaving, the first, I always sort of have an internal list of names of people I would love to do a show with. And from that standpoint, I've done a show with some of them, like Nicole and Bree, and Joe is certainly near the top of the list. So it worked out from that standpoint. And this has been a, sort of welcome opportunity for that to work, assuming Joe can ever figure out how to make his sound work. He's smarter than he looks. So obviously, as he's figuring this out, the Browns played their second preseason game, beat the Philadelphia Eagles, I think convincingly, 22-13, far more convincingly than the score suggests. And, despite the fact that everything, went the way it did, that certainly has led us to a whole bunch of questions as far as where the roster is going to go from here, quarterback play, roster cutdowns, which are getting closer. This has been a really strange preseason to me because even though we're in a world where there's only 3 preseason games and I'm so used to 4, it still feels like the preseason's almost over, even though the NFL season is still technically over 3 weeks away. So it feels like, for whatever reason, it just feels like the NFL season's on the doorstep. The cutdown day is right here, and we're ready to get rolling. So obviously, Dillon Gabriel was the starter this week for the Browns at quarterback. The interception was bad. Certainly, Kevin Stefanski put the blame on everybody, but ultimately, the quarterback made the throw. The fumble, Dillon Gabriel owned it, as he should. Those 2 plays, were obviously not good, and certainly things he needs to learn from and fix. I don't put a whole lot into the whole the fumble element in terms of, I'm not going to say Dillon Gabriel is unable to play quarterback because of the fumble. I would say it's certainly something he needs to clean up. The interception's a little bit more something that needs to be fixed, addressed. But if you take away those 2 plays, which is difficult to do, obviously he came out really strong. He led the first drive right down the field. They scored a touchdown. He was overall 5 for 5 on third down. He was on time, precise with his accuracy. There were a couple of throws I still don't know how he got there. And he's so quick, the DBs had a difficult time even reacting to the play that, and balls in this receiver's hands already without issue. So that stuff really stood out to me. Coming into the game, my whole thing with Dillon Gabriel was, 1, I want to see the guy who thrived in college. And 2, I want to see a guy that looked like he belonged in the NFL, given how, so many people were so harsh with their criticism of him. There were talks that he struggled with accuracy in certain practices and whatever else. And all of a sudden, it clicked really, really well. The thing with Dillon Gabriel coming out of college, whether it was Oklahoma and especially at Oregon, is he always seemed to know where the ball was supposed to go. He always had the answer. Blitzes, various coverages. He always seemed to know where it went. And as a result, that allowed him to operate really, really efficiently. I think he's not nearly, if you're going to try to make a comparison to Shedeur Sanders, he's not nearly as able to sort of extend and sort of just create the way Shedeur is, and Shedeur's got tons and tons of practice with it. He's not as natural in terms of the scramble drill, which is something Shedeur thrived with both at Colorado and in that first preseason game. Dillon Gabriel is going to do everything correctly from the design standpoint. So some people may hold it against him. He's not an improviser. Ultimately, from a coaching standpoint, most coaches are going to be thrilled with the fact that he operates the offense on time, gets them where they need to be, understands where the protection needs to be, gets his guys in position. And the thing that really stood out with him was the fact that the ball was where it needed to be and allowed his receivers to just absolutely thrive. That's not to say Shedeur didn't, because I think he absolutely did in the first preseason game. But it just really popped with Dillon Gabriel, which is, I saw a lot of critics and national pundits weigh in and basically say the same thing. They were really impressed with him, even though a lot of people were sort of criticizing, well, he's not throwing, super deep and all these other things. But he was operating within the pocket. His eyes were in the right place, and he did a really good job. Hopefully Joe's having some luck here as I keep going with this. But so my biggest takeaway just from the two quarterbacks from that standpoint is, coming out of the first game, a lot of people were talking about, well, this is what should launch Shedeur into getting first-team reps. He should be now pushing for the starting job. And I think whether you want to stack it Shedeur and then Gabriel, I don't really care. But I think Dillon Gabriel's performance sort of puts it in perspective that neither one of these guys is anywhere near ready to be pushing for starting time at this moment. I think the reality is they are pretty far behind Joe Flacco right now, which is entirely normal. They're third and fifth round picks, regardless of what you thought they were. Even when, Shedeur Sanders was viewed as somebody, as a first and second round pick, I still didn't think he was somebody that was plug and play. So I don't fault them for that. I just look at his sort of steps in the process. So from that standpoint, I think they should be getting reps with the 2s and the 3s and just continuing to work and progress and do everything that from that standpoint. Because as the Browns made it official, Joe Flacco is the starter and he should be getting all the reps with the 1s, because the Browns need to start thinking about getting serious about the season and getting ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. And at some point, you can't – there comes a point where, yes, you want to get those guys reps. You want to continue with the development. The rookies need to get work, and you want to see how much growth they can experience over the course of the year. But you want to get Joe Flacco ready. You want this team to be ready. You want this team to be able to go start the season with a real chance to go out there and go 1-0. And especially with what I'm seeing from the Bengals in preseason, we'll see how much of a that is. I hear something. Based on myself from the Bengals in preseason, I think their offense is going to be fantastic. I don't know how well they're going to block the Browns' defensive line. I don't think their defense is worth anything right now. The Trey Hendricks situation is what it is. I don't see anything to suggest that that's going to be, but do I think they should pay him? Yeah. Do I think it's silly that that they've taken the posture they're taking? Yes. But I also don't think Trey Hendrickson is a magic wand for the many, many issues I'm seeing from the Bengals defense. They have played 2 preseason games, and the opponent is averaging basically like 25 yards per carry, seemingly. They have not stopped anything or even contested anything from that standpoint. So there are people who want to jumpstart the rookies, see what they can do, get as much information as possible. I think at some
– Do I still have no volume?
Oh, I can hear you now. I don't know if you can hear anything, but I can hear you. You have to take this team seriously. you have to take the Browns seriously. You cannot just write this season off and say we're just worried about the rookie quarterbacks. You have to be honest to the rest of that locker room, and Joe Flacco is honest to the rest of that locker room. And, we'll see what shakes out with a couple other things on the roster. We can talk about Isaiah Bond. We can talk about the still lingering issue with Quinshon Judkins. But if you're the Browns, based on the camp you're having, you have to feel like you can go into week 1 and beat the Cincinnati Bengals and start out 1-0. And if you do that, then all bets are off in terms of what you think is going to happen the rest of the year. You can't just immediately go, well, we're going to do poorly and then, we're going to move on to the rookies. So you have to take that seriously. Joe Flacco has been effective. Is there something to the idea that maybe Kenny Pickett would have made a real challenge to the starting job if he were healthy and able to go through the whole time? Perhaps.
If I can't hear. There we go.
Once again, I can hear you. But the fact of the matter is injury sort of took over. And even if you want to say Joe Flacco won by default, which is entirely fair, I also think he's shown well in what we've seen from practice and what we've seen so far in the joint practices and everything else. So I feel like, did we get the competition maybe we wanted? Not necessarily, but I always, I thought Joe Flacco was going to be the favorite anyway. And with Kenny Pickett and everything he can sort of offer, we're sort of deferred on that. At this point, a lot can change in 3 weeks, but I'm still sort of the opinion that we're going to get 4 quarterbacks kept on the roster, at least initially. I think that becomes more challenging than it used to when I was sort of operating on the assumption that Quinshon Judkins and Devin Bush were going to be suspended. Now, there's some belief that Quinshon Judkins isn't going to be suspended at all, although the legal issue is the league is still dealing with his issue. And then I still assume Devin Bush is going to be suspended, but we've got to see that out. So if that's the case, then it's sort of it makes it very easy to then make the case that Kenny Pickett or the 4 quarterbacks are the best 53 players on the roster, which is how Andrew Berry is going to grade this thing out. The question is there something that's going to come up that makes a move appealing? The example that jumps out right away would be the New York Jets. Tyrod Taylor's out for the year. I have watched Justin Fields try to play football in the preseason so far, and I have no idea why they decided he was, good enough to build around as a starting quarterback. But that it looks genuinely terrible. So whether he just simply fails or he gets hurt, maybe there's a world where the Browns could trade the Jets, Kenny Pickett, but I'm not sure that there aren't other guys that are going to be out there that maybe make more sense or cheaper or are more appealing. Likewise, you could end up in a world where, we've heard reports that people have called the Browns for Dillon Gabriel. I'm going to go ahead and guess that they are lowball trade offers, and they're basically just calling and saying, we'll give you this because you've got 4 quarterbacks. But one of those teams that has consistently come up is the Miami Dolphins in terms of interest with Dillon Gabriel, and it's completely understandable why. You look at what. Oh, now you're good.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I was waiting for you to finish.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I'll go ahead and throw it to you. Why would the Miami Dolphins like Dillon Gabriel?
He's a perfect fit behind Tua. Perfect fit. Down to the fact that he's a lefty. He's physically limited, just like Tua is. He doesn't have a rocket for an arm, so it's not like the wide receivers are going to, have to worry about catching 2 different types of balls coming out of the pocket like that. I think Dillon Gabriel made a whole lot of sense in Miami. I think he'd be a perfect fit behind Tua. He's identical to what they do in that offense down there, the way Mike McDaniel likes to run it. I think he's a perfect fit. I don't envision anybody paying what it would take for the Browns to move off Gabriel. The Browns like Gabriel. They took him 94th overall for a reason. And I feel like you're hearing all this trade talk because they are probably begging for somebody to take Kenny Pickett. Absolutely begging for somebody to give them assets to take Kenny Pickett.
Maybe. I'm not convinced. Look, I think your theory makes all the sense in the world. It makes all the sense in the world for the Browns to be like, please offer us something for Kenny Pickett. But they really like Kenny Pickett. And it's like, and there's an element of this where like, there are Browns fans that are like dumbfounded that they like Kenny Pickett. But the fact of the matter, look, I would just go back to the preseason game we just watched. Dillon Gabriel, to me, and I think your comparison's right on. Down to the fact that both Tua and Dillon Gabriel are left-handed, it makes it that much easier. The Miami Dolphins are the one team where you can sit there and go, we'll just get two left-handed quarterbacks to do the same thing, and basically say, if Tua gets concussed, a guy who's a concern from that standpoint, we can just get essentially another one with way easier to spell and live from that standpoint. Yeah. But having watched Dillon Gabriel, who I think does a lot of things that Kevin Stefanski liked to do with Baker Mayfield. Now, granted, he's not as talented, not even close. They're not in the same realm. No. Baker Mayfield, infinitely more gifted as a quarterback, but in terms of the rollout game, in terms of the stretch play action stuff that we saw when Kevin Stefanski got right in 2020, I think they like to do that stuff. And here's the thing. Kenny Pickett can do all that stuff, which is where I sit there and go, part of it is everybody wants Kevin Stefanski to come out and tell them, are begging Kevin Stefanski
what his quarterback
is. Want your quarterback to look like. And the problem is Kevin Stefanski doesn't have a type. I mean, other than the fact that we can say he picked Dillon Gabriel. Do I think that Dillon Gabriel is the one guy he wanted? No. We have every reason to believe he really liked Jackson Dart. We have every reason to believe that there are other quarterbacks in this class he liked. And if we get into a situation, which I think is inevitable, where they start looking into quarterbacks next year, I don't think they're all going to look like athletic, like Dillon Gabriel types, even if they're taller. Like I could easily see a world where Browns really like both Cade Klubnik and Drew Lar, who are polar opposites in terms of stylistically. Drew Lar, the comparison I've seen thrown out there quite a bit, like Todd McShay loves this comparison. I think it's good. It's Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
And Cade Klubnik is far more athletic, can win with his legs. So that's part of the problem. So I think it makes sense for the Browns to say, hey, if you can give us something for Kenny Pickett, the timing just didn't work because of the injury and everything else, that we can sort of move on from that standpoint. And maybe it just comes off as sort of like that opportunity that you never really got to fully flesh out. However, I guess the other situation is maybe they want to see this thing to the trade deadline, though. Again, I would say your theory of the case makes way more sense because you, as much as I can make the argument that the four quarterbacks are the part of the best 53, it's obnoxious to carry four quarterbacks.
It's the last thing you want to do. Agreed. And, I think one of the toughest parts about Kenny Pickett and his situation in Cleveland, we have this predisposed notion of that he's a failure, right? I mean, he went to Pittsburgh as a first-round pick. He flashed a little bit as a rookie, but then ultimately fell flat on his face. And that all those things kind of hang over these guys' heads. But you're talking about a Pittsburgh organization that has not been able to figure out the offensive side of the football since they had Hall of Fame level Big Ben. They just can't do it. It doesn't matter who they bring in. They bring in established veterans. They go with young guys. It doesn't matter. That offense has been stagnant in the last, damn near decade now under Tomlin. And whether it's Arthur Smith or Matt Canada or whoever the hell they throw out there, they haven't been able to make anything happen on a consistent level on the offensive side of the ball. And people crush Kenny Pickett for that. That's not necessarily fair. And as Sam Darnold showed you a year ago, situation is everything. Circumstance is everything. And the amount of development that guys get, I mean, not all these organizations are created equal. They're not all going to do it the right way. And I feel like these players get pigeonholed into, he's not a starter. He's this, he's that, based on organizational failures. Kenny Pickett's got the skill set that we want in this offense. he's similar in that kind of versatile build where he's got good feet. He's a nice athlete. He throws an accurate ball. He doesn't have a howitzer, but he's got a strong enough arm that he can make plays downfield. I think if things would have broke differently for him in this preseason, ultimately, I think they wanted to start Kenny Pickett. I really do. They know what Joe Flacco is.
Yeah.
And he offers no upside. He is strictly a 2025 quarterback. And that's down to the nuts and the bolts of it, man.
I think they absolutely wanted Kenny Pickett to be good enough to get them off of Joe Flacco. Now, the thing I always thought it was going to be really hard for Kenny Pickett to do, and certainly the injury made it impossible, is the guys in that locker room who were here, David Njoku, Myles Garrett, all those other guys have proof of concept.
Yep.
They can sit there and go, we've won with Joe Flacco. We know what winning feels like with Joe Flacco. We know he gives a shot to win in these games. We've seen him come back. We've seen he's unflappable. Mm-hmm. Yes, he throws picks, but he's always going to fight. We know what he's going to do, and he's not going to melt down. Yep. He's not, and to go back to an unfortunate trope in terms of the Browns, he is an adult. Yeah. He is an adult, and there's no question what he's going to be day in and day out. I always thought it was going to be Kenny Pickett had to not only beat Joe Flacco in terms of just ability, and it would have looked different. And to your point, I agree. Kenny Pickett is a way better athlete than people sort of remember. Yeah. And, the Steelers stuff aside, I've gone back and seen clips of him against the Browns. He was obnoxiously good against the Browns with some of the throws he was making, some of the plays he was making. But I always felt like there was an extra hurdle for him to climb, which was – or to hop over, which was – getting the team to believe in him over somebody they've gone into battle with and win football games. And I'm not going to say that was insurmountable, but I always felt like that was going to be really, really tough. And he was going to have to make a really strong argument. Now, we know the Browns have one more preseason game. I have no doubt, as much as I hate it, I personally hate this. I do not need to see Kenny Pickett play preseason. I know they want him to play preseason. There will undoubtedly be some of that there's some opportunity to say, hey, he looks really good. Maybe someone will call us. I do think part of it is they just want to see him do the things they thought he could do. Yeah.
Well, Pete, that was the first move they made this offseason. The first quarterback decision they made is they went out and they traded for Kenny Pickett, like right from the get-go. Right from the get-go. Flacco came in a month later, something like that. And, Flacco, I think, like Kenny Pickett was who they got to, hopefully be the guy. The Flacco edition merely raised the floor. It said, we're at least going to be Joe Flacco good this year. Whatever happens in the draft happens. We got Kenny Pickett as our guy that hopefully we can, like not to call on Sam Darnold again, but it's the same situation. Get a talented kid who needs a change of scenery and see what we can do. And then the two rookies came in, and that's the thing. The second rookie is what put everything on its ear. It's what made everything kind of wonky. Not that it's an insurmountable thing, and I'm not against it. I was a Shedeur guy. I'm glad that we have Shedeur, and I was way happier with the draft after we got Shedeur than when we had just gotten Gabriel. But
well, there's a couple of things. One, listen, the Browns don't have a quarterback. They have to take every shot they can take. Like
every single one.
Listen, I would not, I've said it before. I would not have picked Dillon Gabriel. I thought he was a day 3 pick. I cite the age first and then the height. Look, I watched the tape. I get what people liked about him. I see the things, and I still think Shedeur for me was a better prospect. But between getting Kenny Pickett and getting Dillon Gabriel and getting Shedeur Sanders, I don't care. Until they have a quarterback, they don't. So they should do every single thing they can to get one. So I'm never going to hurt them. Now, what makes this really interesting all of a sudden is what was one of the big complaints with taking a second quarterback? Well, they couldn't do what? They couldn't take a receiver. Yeah. So now they suddenly get this weird situation, and there is part of me that wants to give them credit for this because I can relate this to how they've done other things in terms of planning to have a vacancy after the draft with undrafted rookies to then say, hey, we're going to see how this works out with Isaiah Bond because they liked him during the draft, and say, hey, if this works out, and I've already seen the spin, and I love Zagura, but it's spin, to say, and I think you agree with this too, unfortunately, to say, hey, we've got Mason Graham and Quinshon Judkins and Carson Schedeur and all these guys, and Isaiah Bond's a third round talent. We get to add him into this mix, and this whole thing where you can sort of like, I'm not gonna argue this point. It absolutely makes the draft look better to get this lottery ticket in Isaiah Bond, and all of a sudden you go, a lot of people, the biggest complaint they had was we didn't get a receiver, and we absolutely need, we're receiver starved. We need all the receivers can get. 2 quarterbacks doesn't get a receiver. And now you get to sit there and the circumstances being what they are, I don't know what happened. I'm not going to pretend I know what happened. And unfortunately with these situations, we never get to know what happened. So it's always tough. But even though I have criticisms of Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver prospect, I cannot argue with this move from a free.
It costs nothing.
Other than money in a roster spot.
Yep. And you know what the thing is, my favorite part about the Isaiah Bond addition is, number one, he's got the familiarity with Tommy Rees from 2 years ago at Alabama. But number two, what do we say almost every Sunday? Where is the speed? We need speed. We need game-altering speed. We need guys that are going to, as soon as they step on the field, every safety and every corner and every coach is like, right there, 81. Bond is on the field. Bond is in the slot. Bond is here. Eyes on Bond. Because that type of speed can change everything about how the defense approaches you. And we all know what that can do for the running game if you got safeties that can't creep into the box. So for me, I'm not expecting immediate dividends from Bond, but if we can find a way to work that speed and that playmaking ability into our offense, let's go. Absolutely.
So I have a lot on this. So let's start here. What can he do? I think I've been very skeptical of how quickly he can be part of this in 3 weeks. Here's the thing. It could be a really small package.
Yeah.
Run fast. Just run fast. You don't really have to do that much to have him understand run fast and go.
Make him a decoy. Put him out there and have him burn down the sidelines.
As much as we want to get into, oh man, they got a thick playbook to learn and this, that, and the other thing, there is an element where you just say, listen, here's your package of plays. You're running deep. You're running deep vertical, deep post. You're running some sort of cross seam. They're not going to ask him, at least right now. I don't think they're going to get too much in the weeds with manufactured touches. And the reason I think that is, one, Gage Laverdan so far seems to be able to do it. I feel pretty good about his chances to make this roster. And two, we haven't seen it. And this is part of the problem with the whole Quinshon Judkins issue. I have been convinced since he got here that Dillon Sampson was going to be not just a backup running back, that they were going to put him out in space, shift him, do a whole bunch of stuff, and essentially get some manufactured touches. Because I go back to Tennessee's offense with him, and you particularly last year, because they were not nearly as dynamic outside. And you sit there and you watched him basically go, Dillon Sampson versus 11 guys. And it was a lot of, they did more condensed formations this year to try to get him outside. They did some other stuff to try to do things that they haven't been doing the last few years because they've had such good wide receiver talent on the outside that they haven't needed to. So if you're the Browns and you sit there and you go, you watch this kid who is really fast and can make a guy miss, you just move him away from all the guys and give him one or two guys to beat and just give him the ball and do it that way. And maybe they are resistant to do that because he might have to be in the backfield more, but I still think they're going to just feed Jerome Ford more. And if Quinshon Judkins is able to come back, I don't think it's going to take that long to get him up to speed.
No.
Where I think you can then just allow Bond to just be that outside threat. Now, in terms of, I don't know how true this is. If the case had never come up, my concern is that I heard the Browns were interested in drafting him let's assume 3rd, 4th round area because that's where he's projected to go. This is where I hate this. I'm happy he's undrafted, but I cannot stand this type of receiver in the 3rd or 4th round because the number one trait that carries over from college to the NFL is production. He just doesn't have it. And you can talk yourself into, well, Jalen Milroe wasn't very good for him. And he wasn't. Jalen Milroe was a project. Yeah. I think Quinn Ewers stunk throwing the deep ball for him. But he still had Steve Sarkisian. And then Matthew Golden got really good, whereas Isaiah Bond arguably got worse. Mm-hmm. That stuff terrifies me. And then it feels like, and believe it or not, from a market share production standpoint, which is what I'm interested in, Isaiah Bond, less productive than Anthony Schwarz was in college. Now, I will freely admit to you, Anthony Schwarz was worse on tape. Yeah. Anthony Schwarz struggled in tracking the ball, get his hands on the ball, those type of things. But he also suffered from some of the same issues. And that Bo Nix at Auburn, it permanently tainted my view of him because of how bad he was at Auburn compared to what he became at Oregon. So from that standpoint, they're similar, but like that drives me nuts that they are still. I understand their fascination with speed. I just wish it came with
a football player
proof and more proof on the field. Like, look, I cannot make this simpler. Good college players tend to be, or I should say dominant college players are more likely to be dominant NFL players than guys who have traits. I know they're like Dane Brugler. I love Dane Brugler, but he's a big traits guy. Yeah. That stuff drives me nuts because traits just equate to potential. And yes, occasionally it works. But if they were serious about potentially taking him in the 3rd round, that's where I said I want to question wide receiver process. So like I'll compare it to the guy I pounded the table for, Pat Bryant out of Illinois, tested like crap, didn't do a whole lot in terms of the athletic stuff that you're sitting there drooling over. All he did was dominate. Yep. And then, it's preseason. It's very easy for me to go to try to get my gold medal for this because he's crushing it for the Broncos. But he just gets it in terms, seemingly, from right now, he looks like he just gets it as a football player. And yes, I understand they do very different things. And Isaiah Bond, again, from Kadarius Hodge to Anthony Schwarz, they always want this element. So I get it. I just wish their process was a little bit more focused on things that I think are more translatable to the NFL than what Isaiah Bond does. Now, I say this, and I hope the Browns are right and I am dead wrong. One, not only on Isaiah Bond, the person, and I wish on their statement they would have and how they've messaged this, leaned more into Tommy Rees is vouching for his character, if that is what Tommy Rees is doing, rather than some of the other stuff they're saying. Because I'm old enough, I'm old enough to remember when they said they talked to people that on all sides of the Deshaun Watson thing, and then the lawyer for the victims never got a phone call, and nobody ever got a phone call. I really hope that we're not going to find out that on the side Isaiah Bond thing where they said we talked to people on both sides of this thing, that we're going to find out that they never called the other side, and it's going to be a whole nother thing. Now, clearly the difference here is if Isaiah Bond is a dope, they can cut him tomorrow, eat the small amount of money, and so be it. There's no investment there. But nevertheless, I hope we don't run into that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like they clearly look at certain draft picks. Well, I mean, I don't want to say certain draft picks, but the 3rd round, I mean, taking Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round that's a move that opens you up for criticism because you have to ask yourself, is a career backup worth a 3rd round pick? And if you don't view him as simply a career backup, I mean, that kind of takes me to a whole nother type of questions. But I mean, Bond is going to be a gadget guy, in my opinion. And I think this is if he works out, if it's high end. I don't see him ever being a number 1 or number 2 absolute rock star receiver.
I think that part's critical. I think that part is critical. The fact that he's a flyer changes the expectations of what he needs to be.
Yes, completely. So if we can use his speed on special teams and use his speed to stretch the field and just try to open things up in the intermediate or the running game, get attention off Judy or Tillman or Jamari Thrash or Deontay Johnson, if he's still on the team. I mean, that type of speed is worth fleshing out and figuring out what you have with this guy. But again, it's such a small investment. It's really no big deal. He could be gone tomorrow, and it's not going to alter the team in any way. It's just he's got that potential, so it's worth seeing where it goes.
I agree with you. The question I have for you with Dillon Gabriel, let's say he's a career backup, because that's where I think this is going.
Yeah, me too.
Let's say the Browns get it right. Let's say it's either Shedeur Sanders or insert draft pick next year, and that's the guy. And Dillon Gabriel sort of settles into to be that backup. Is it worth a third-round pick if for some 3-game stretch he comes in there and he can get you 2 wins?
No.
Still no for you.
Still no for me. No. I think you can find that guy just about anywhere.
Well, I mean, and the case in point is Jake Browning with the Bengals right now, who's a 7th-round pick and did that exact thing.
Yeah.
I mean, here again, I tend to agree with you, but it also comes back to they don't have a quarterback, so I just can't hit that process. But to your point, it's going to be very easy to look back in 3 years and go, we could have had insert player that is now a backup quarterback. And look, fortifying the quarterback position is critical. It's very easy to say if you're the Browns, we had to get this right, but you're going to get this. It's going to happen. Now it helps that they got Harold Fannin. That makes that a lot easier, but unquestionably, Dillon Gabriel still. Again, I see what they like in him, and I'm still sitting there going, "Why was this really the pick?" And seemingly, everybody. I know initially everybody was saying no one was going to make this pick, and yet it's very clear that somebody was going to, even though it wasn't going to be the Dolphins, because famously they traded they traded up the previous round and used that pick, what would have been their pick to use on Gabriel, for Jonas Savainia, the guard.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a thing, but I think the Browns, I think the criticism is justified. I think it's going to be easy to second guess. I don't think they were outlandish in terms of where the NFL sort of viewed Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I can appreciate about that pick, and I can appreciate about what they did with the guys that they brought in this offseason, we had 2 guys to play last year in Deshaun and DTR that could not play. The offense was halted when they were in the game. It just was.
Deshaun, it felt like they had 9 on the field.
It's literally 9. Right? It's legitimately unbelievable. We have 4 guys right now, which the one that I'm least convinced can step in right now and at least keep the offense afloat is Shedeur, just because I haven't seen him do it in a regular season setting with the regular season speed and the game planning and the defense and everything like that. And I'm a Shedeur guy. I just haven't seen it. I think Gabriel is so smart and is just so NFL ready despite the physical limitations that he can at least stay afloat and he can at least operate the offense in a way that's not going to absolutely cripple the team. So I can at least appreciate that they got the most experienced guy absolutely available at quarterback to at least be able to keep things afloat. If Flacco gets hurt and Pickett gets hurt and he's forced into action, he's at least ready to play. He's not a project that he can't see the field yet. So I at least get it from that experience standpoint and the ability to play this year if he needs to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not there yet with any of those guys simply because one, I like and will continue to like DTR until I die, even though that was awful watching him Saturday. Now, part of that is through 2 preseason games, I genuinely feel bad for the opposing quarterback at this point. It's unfair. But he also lit up preseason for the Browns, to the point where there were conversations about, would you take a 2nd-round pick for DTR was a radio topic, and the resounding answer was no.
Yep.
So, look, this is why I say, I think it's pretty clearly Flacco, and maybe Pickett would be in that tier if he got to compete. Maybe we'll get to see that. Mm-hmm. I think people need to sort of let the young guys do it with the 2s and 3s and figure it out. And maybe at some point during the season, they will be ready. I don't think it's realistic that either one is going to start, though. It's very possible we'll see them both at some point this season.
Yeah.
And look, a lot can change in 3 weeks. A lot can change in 9 weeks. But, I think particularly with Shedeur, one, I think he's learned a lot in terms of he's the one who will say this. I have learned a lot in terms of just growing mentally in the game. That's always what he leads with. In terms of seeing, the underneath the center stuff and some of that, I have major questions in terms of what's going to happen when teams scheme him up, because that was an issue he had at Colorado when he saw things that were unfamiliar to him. And the BYU game is the perfect illustration. They just threw stuff at him and he couldn't really react. I think he's got to continue to refine habits in terms of he cannot run backwards on 4th and 1. He cannot take sacks where he look, I love the idea that he was extending the play on the 1 3rd down.
Yeah.
But why didn't you just throw it away as opposed to running out of bounds 2 yards back? Like, those are things where I look at that, and I love his ability to make plays. I think he's really, really impressive in terms of what we saw from the scramble drill. But I think when real NFL defenses are out there and they're trying to scheme up, they're going to fool him. And he's going to have more problems with that. Now, when I broke him down, I thought he's a guy who could be a long-term starter in 2 years, or he could be out of the league in 2 years. There's enough talent there, and the array of throws, which is always what's going to stand out between these two. Dillon Gabriel has a very limited tool chest. There's not much on his belt, but he's really good at knowing how to use it. Shedeur has a very wide range of tools that he's pretty good with. I don't think he's necessarily a craftsman with all of them, but man, he can do some impressive things. And if he figures out how to get all those things there, you can see where you can get, whether it's franchise or just below, long-term starter that can help you win a whole lot of football games.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like in the small sample, I mean, obviously we saw it at Colorado, but college is college. But in the small sample size we saw in the preseason game and what we've seen throughout camp, Shedeur is an impressive level of accurate. He throws a very, very catchable ball, and he's just got natural placement skills that honestly you don't see often. So if he is as behind mentally as we are under the impression of, it's very intriguing to think when he does catch up mentally, what that's going to be able to do for him and just his ability to spread the ball around to the weapons that we have. I mean, he's a wide receiver's dream. If he can play on time, throwing a catchable, beautiful ball, it's going to hit guys in stride. That's got yak potential all over the place. He's perfect for the offense. He's perfect for it. And we were told coming out with the limited athleticism, he looks like a nice athlete, man.
All right.
No, timeout. I'm not trying to say he's Lamar Jackson, Pete, but he moved well and he outran some guys. He showed a level of shiftiness that I personally wasn't expecting.
That's the word. Listen, I think you can beat him in a 40.
Oh, Pete, you know me. I got good feet, man. That's not that bad.
I think you can beat him in a 40, but he is quick. He's twitchy. Quick. That's where his athleticism is. He is genuinely twitchy. But when he tries to run a straight line, there ain't nothing there. I had visions of, to me, it looked like slower than Tim Couch running. And this is in an era where guys routinely ran 5+ 40s at the quarterback position. I think that's what it looks like in a straight line. But I agree with you. Twitch. Yeah. He's genuinely very quick, very impressive. The other thing you mentioned, I want to see him operate on time. The thing that jumped out at me, there were 2 times he had a tough time getting the ball holstered and ready to go on slants, and the accuracy he was missed high on both of them.
That first third down, he missed high.
I think he's fantastic when the play is developed, when he's got protection. I think, look, I've already seen improvement in terms of his ability to navigate the pocket and trusting his protection. One, I already think he's got the better protection he's ever had in his life. Yeah. And this is with guys who are still throwing lookout blocks in that first preseason game because there were a few. Yeah. But I want to see him to be able to get the ball out quicker and go. It feels like that was the biggest difference with Dillon Gabriel, where it felt like ping, 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 ping. And that's really tough to defend, where Shedeur, extremely accurate. Like, going through the Colorado tape, there are plays where you're just like, oh my God. Like the question I kept asking myself was, could he have put this ball in a better spot? And often the answer was no. Like it was literally where exactly the receiver couldn't have been handed the ball any better, is able to catch and run and made those guys look really good. And the thing my evaluation of Shedeur was great for receivers, awful for his protection. And hopefully one is still there, although again, operate quicker. And then the second one is hopefully we're figuring this out and getting better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, going back to Gabriel and how quick he was getting into his reads and getting the ball out, and especially some of those, the third down throw to Thrash on the sideline, like pinpoint, like unbelievably accurate. That was by far the most encouraging thing I've seen from Dillon Gabriel since we drafted him. And it was nice to see because he looked in control. He looked comfortable. Yeah. He knew the answers to the test and he was able to execute. Now, my biggest issue with Gabriel, and it's the same issue that I have down here with Tua. Tua's a guy that can get you to the playoffs. He can win you 10 games. He can probably challenge for a division at some point if, Buffalo's a little bit off their game or whatever. But at the end of the day, Tua is not going to put an offense on his back. And no matter what your defense does, he's going to score a touchdown. He's going to make it happen. He needs everything to work. And the thing is, Tua's arm's good enough, just like Dillon Gabriel's arm's good enough, when he's got a solid base. When he's got to throw off platform, that arm goes from pretty good to a problem, And I think that's the main difference for me between these two that I've seen is that I believe in Shedeur's physicality in the NFL more than I do in Gabriel's.
So I think Dillon Gabriel is zippy as hell with his ball. I would say
zippy.
I think Shedeur's has got. I think whatever the Browns have done, or his private coach, or whatever they recommended, I think he's already improved mechanically in terms of the ball coming out. Now, some of that comes down to the fact he's not running backwards. Makes it a lot easier to throw with velocity. But I do think whatever little tweaks they've made mechanically are already paying off, and he's throwing a ball. Now, I also think that might be part of why he's this and the fact he's just been working his ass off is why he experienced some soreness, and potentially why he had the oblique is because this is his body figuring out what he's trying to do. But I do think it's getting better, and I do think that's making him more competitive. Now, it's summer. It looks great now. How will it look like in November? I don't know. I don't know the answer for either of those guys. Dillon Gabriel has a little bit more grace, I believe, because he played the Big Ten with wind and all that stuff against higher level opponents. The Big 12, I don't know if there's a single defense I can think of that's worth a shit, but whatever. So we'll see where that ends up. So, yeah, those are questions that I think they're going to have to answer, and that's why I think they are firmly in, should be with the 2s and the 3s. But, for the preseason game, and I'm probably not going to get my way on this, I would give those two each a half. Oh, yeah. Assuming both are healthy and get out of there.
Yeah. No, and I would too, and it's so funny because there's so much backlash over what was supposed to be a 4-way competition, and Shedeur didn't get any reps against the ones, and Gabriel did, and it's still not like whatever. Man, look at the schedule. Look at the first 5 games. You've got Joe Flacco, you've got Kenny Pickett, and you've got 5 absolutely ridiculous games to start this season. Let these rookies get as comfortable as possible before you not just throw them to the Wolves, throw them to those Wolves. You open with Cincinnati, and that's probably going to be the easiest defense we face all year, right? But then you got at Baltimore, you've got Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota overseas. Then we come back for Pittsburgh, then Miami. That's brutal. That's legitimately brutal. And if the defense isn't what we think it is, you could be looking at an 0-7 in that scenario, even with the veteran starters. So I feel like we need to pump the brakes on, all this backlash with the rookies not getting enough of an opportunity, and we want to see Shedeur with the ones. We got time, man. There's 17 regular season games. I'm intrigued enough with each of these guys and what they could potentially do. Hell, give them each a month. Give Flacco the first month, and then give Pickett the next month, and then, man.
I hope that is what Kevin Stefanski told his team in the meeting.
No, of course not. Of course not. I'm just like, as a fan, I'm genuinely intrigued to see what all 4 guys can do. I would love it. We all talk, we hammer on 2023 and that stretch with Joe Flacco. And don't get me wrong, I'm fired up about it too. But the biggest reason is we had no offensive line. We had no running game for that. We were as one-dimensional an offense as you could possibly be. I mean, thank God we had gangbusters on defense, but still, we could do one thing. Joe could sling it. We couldn't run. We could hardly protect him. You remember they had to start rolling him out and moving the pockets just to buy him a little bit of time?
They kept running. With no running game, they kept running boot for the sake of being able to cross up the line and to protect. Yeah. Everybody knew they weren't actually handing the ball up. It was entirely to just change where the linemen were to try to cut off angles for the pass rush.
Yeah, and I feel like nobody even figured it out until the damn wild card. It used to just beat the brakes off us. It was unbelievable. Yeah. But I mean, that's my thing with Flacco. We saw Flacco go on an absolute tear and take this team into the playoffs with such little support. Support from the O-line, the running game wasn't there. Man, if we could have that running game get back to where it was in 2020, 2021, oh my gosh. That would be lovely to see with a guy like Joe, who we know can spin it. We know he can throw for 400 if you give him the opportunity.
Well, the critical piece for that is, look, it's as much as it's about the quarterback, it's about, can Jerry Jeudy be great again? I think he can. Can David Njoku be great again? I think he can. But it's really, then you get to Cedric Tillman. He had 3 games. I'd like to see more than that.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that with what they got last year, and they can't risk it if one of these guys isn't ready to go and you're sitting there again watching. Not that I think it would necessarily happen the same way, where it looks like you have an offense with 9 guys. Yeah. And that stuff. So Cedric Tillman gets opportunities. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jamari Thrash. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to be able to get him the ball to be able to evaluate these things. Yeah. We can't sit here and go into the season or through the season and not come out with answers on these things. Now, look, I think the Browns are still should be in the market for a wide receiver early next year.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, if it's Gage Laverdan, if it's Caden Davis, Deontay Johnson, or if it's Isaiah Bond, and Harold Fannon's the other one, which I cannot wait to see.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to be able to get them the ball in a way that's going to look like real football so we can get a real evaluation. And either these kids are going to grow and get better. Ultimately, that's the goal. Or we're going to find out they can't do it. Either way, as much as the quarterback is central to this whole thing in terms of, yes, I understand people want to get answers to that, even though, I think they're getting answers in the building and in practice ultimately over the course of the year. I think people love to talk to themselves into this idea that they have to see it on the field. Yeah. You're going to get an evaluation one way or the other, and ultimately, I think we know where that's going to end up. You may disagree, but I think ultimately that's going to end up with somebody being picked very early next year, or unless the Browns. The only way it doesn't happen to me is if one of those guys is basically in the mix for offensive rookie of the year, or they win enough games where they're so far out of position it's no longer a conversation. Yeah. Either those scenarios seem very unlikely to me, though. Here again, just the tenor of the camp and the way these guys are getting prepared and what I'm seeing, even from just the 2s and the 3s, just from a intensity standpoint, is leading to me to believe that this team will certainly be better than it was last year. And it's just a question of how does better than last year work against the schedule they now have to face, and I would hope they're going to have a little bit more mental fortitude, even if things don't go well early, because they aren't going to turn around and look at a quarterback and go, this dude cannot play. I don't even know if he wants to be out here. Yeah. And can sort of get through it and be like, we're going to get through this. It's tough. We're going to fight. I mean, because even last year, I thought the defense fought the whole year.
Yeah.
Then I think they're ultimately going to find their way to success within reason. I think, success is ultimately going to be, how do we define that? But still, I think they're going to figure out something that makes this look like a reasonable football team.
Yeah, I have, and I mean, this is probably, just me being a homer or whatever you want to call it. It's a really good defense. Obviously losing Emerson hurts, and, Ward is apparently fine, but be that as it may, I think there's a really good defense. And I think the defense has the potential to be better than 2023 just because of the help that Miles has around him right now. If Mason Graham can be 80% of what we're hoping he's going to be, that's going to be enormous. A guy like Carson Schlesinger in the middle of that defense, his physicality and his speed and his playmaking. Like, there's so many things that intrigue me about this team right now that if you tell me that I'm going to get the 2023 defense or something close to that, and then offensively, I've got Joe Flacco with the running game, I'm sorry. We might not win 10, 11 games, but we are going to be an absolute problem every single Sunday. Every single Sunday. And it's no, we're not gonna, are we going to be a playoff team? I don't know. Probably not. It's just stacked against it. We are in that position offensively. We've got rookies at running back. We've got offensive tackles that scare the bejesus out of me. And we've got a quarterback room that is underwhelming. That's the fact of the matter. Mm-hmm. Like, the rest of the NFL doesn't look at the Browns the way I look at the Browns. Like, they don't see the potential that I see. I just think that this team is going to be markedly better than people think. I don't think it's going to be a team that's fighting for the number one pick. I just don't see
that stuff's insane to me.
It's insane.
Because I've watched enough preseason football. You could play for the Saints.
Yep.
Like, they're genuinely awful. They are genuinely awful. I don't look. I think Cam Ward is tremendous. I don't think much of the Titans. Those are just two examples. I'm not going to besmirch every other team. The Jets suck. The fact of the matter is, though, that we should have as long as we don't go sideways with injuries, we should have a pretty clear answer on how far this team is away by the end of this. If the defense is good, and I think the defense has a chance to be better than 2023, not from a statistical standpoint, because that was historic in terms of the numbers, but relative to the competition they will be facing and those things, I think it can be more consistent than what we saw, because they will, unless, again, we get a weird rash of injuries like they did that year, in addition to the fact that the competition wasn't that great, they're going to play better quarterbacks. They're going to play better offenses that are going to make, they may be a better defense, but it's not going to look the same, because at some point somebody's going to make a play. That's reasonable. But if at the end of this thing, we're sitting here and going, if they get a quarterback and they can add one more weapon, or they, and start working and replacing some of these offensive linemen, are we going to be in a position where we're start talking about competing? Are we going to, probably corner is going to be somewhere in there? Is there going to be some other piece that comes out of nowhere that we can't sort of forecast, that we have to replace or address or whatever? Okay. But are we going to come out of this thing going, okay, if they do A, B, and C, which is usually a tall order for one offseason. Yeah. But nevertheless, is at least you can at least see it. You can at least see how you get there. That could be pretty good. The part of this where, look, if the Browns aren't the one thing I have always appreciated, and part of the reason I wanted Abdul Carter with the second pick and would happily trade for Micah Parsons. My mantra is pretty simple. If the Browns can't have a good quarterback, no one else can either. So just kill them all. And we'll just roll that way. But to your point, everything you're hearing about Mason Graham it was a little bit of an adjustment period, just for the shock of changing what they want from him in terms of getting upfield and going. Took a couple weeks to figure out. And then since then, it's been, he's pretty good. And I'm curious, they've changed his body composition. He's like 290 at this point, which I don't know if I love that, but nevertheless, I mean, just looking at him, you can see he has lost weight in his face. Yeah. And he's fast. We'll see how much you can really draw the conclusion based on Isaiah McGuire's 3 snaps where he completely dismantled the defense, or 6 snaps, 3 pass rushes where he should have had 2 sacks. Yeah. One didn't, because DTR decided, well, I can throw this and can get tipped up and become an even bigger circus. At the very least, I can say here, Isaiah McGuire is working for whatever ground floor was last year is significantly higher than was it this year. And other than Deontay Johnson, you could say was the breakout star on offense. Isaiah McGuire was fantastic last year in terms of his growth. And the big thing for him is outstanding run defender. He had a really good pass rush win rate, but he wasn't getting home. Now, some of that is because you're dealing with Myles Garrett, who's a very greedy pass rusher.
Yeah, it gets home quick.
Is if that he can take that next step and now add a more, realistic pass rush skill set that can really complement. And that if Alex Wright, who looks pretty good, coming back from the injury, if he can do these things, I think Mike Hall's certainly talented, obviously. And then the guy I think people are sleeping on, it partly because he hasn't been out there. He wasn't at OTAs, and then he hasn't taken a preseason snap, is Malik Collins. Malik Collins, I think, I've heard this where people said, Malik Collins was cut by the 49ers, so he can't be good. He's second on the team in pressures on that defense. With
49ers got a lot of money this offseason. They went through the whole purge.
Yes. So you've got what I assume is still going to be a 315-pound 3-tech who is a really good pass rusher with Mike Hall. I think Juwan Briggs, I think the order in which they play the defensive tackle sort of belies how good they are to a certain extent. Juwan Briggs is a house. For a guy who is like Dalvin Tomlinson is a guy I love Dalvin Tomlinson as a player and a person. He just doesn't fit necessarily what
Schwarz wants to do.
What Schwarz really wants.
Yep.
He really wants guys who can get off the field. Juwan Briggs is better at being able to be a little bit better down the line. He could do some of those things. I thought he played really well down the stretch last year. I have high hopes that he's going to be a dude this year. So you're just guy after guy after guy. And then, I'm excited to watch preseason to watch Aiden Huntington and Cam Thomas get after it over and over again.
Julian Okwara has been tough. Tryon Shoyinka flashed a little bit last game.
I want to see more from him. I've seen one pass rush. I want to see more. But he's another guy, so I'm curious to see what else they can get out of him. But it never ends. So that if Myles Garrett, who, I don't know if people have watched the press conference or like tidbits of the press conference from Jordan Mailata, who basically just
he laughed at him.
Continuously talked about how losing was okay because listen, I did my job and he still won.
Yeah.
That if he can stay healthy, stay off his legs and have the season he's poised to have, that just I think 20 sacks is coming at some point. It's just a question: is this the year where he's going to get it? Yeah. With everything else they're doing, I think I feel way better about linebacker than most people do. One, because Jason Tarver's tremendous. Two, Carson Schlesinger looks like an absolute perfect fit for what the Browns want to do because the defensive line is good and because what I've been watching in preseason, even though the linebackers are technically supposed to fix what the defensive line does, I'm still seeing the defensive line cause so much problems that, a guy like Buki Watson looks like a complete stud out there, just making tackle after tackle after tackle.
Yep.
That those guys look great. I think Schlesinger has the potential to be I know there's some people are like making low-key bets that he's going to be defensive rookie of the year. I think it's really tough for that position, but I think he's going to be a guy, has a very good chance to be a guy where people are going to be like, wow, he's really that good. And I say this as somebody who hates the idea of taking a linebacker 33rd overall.
Yeah.
I would just say everything I've seen from Carson Schlesinger, if you're going to take a linebacker as high as they did, he needs to look like Carson Schlesinger does.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'm a big fan of Mo Diabate as well. I feel like he's in line for a pretty good year. I love his skill set. I love how long he is and athletic he is. So I'm interested to see him. Now, Devin Bush, we don't know how long his suspension is going to be, right? Do we have any idea?
We do not. Now, no, we don't. And here's the thing. Like, I don't put it out of the realm of possibility that his job is gone when he comes back.
Yeah.
One, we'll see what happens with Mahmoud Diabate. He's been missing time with injury. I think that's ultimately who they want at will.
Yeah.
But, if Buki Watson's going to play like that, I'm not convinced that Devin Bush has a job when he comes back.
Yeah.
I hated that pick when they made it because he was old. And I thought he stunk to join out as a rookie. I am blown away by what I'm seeing from him, both on special teams and then through the preseason where he's making tackles deep in the backfield. Yep. And I understand this is what he was doing in Mississippi State. He had a ton of tackles for loss. He was Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
That is legit.
It's not easy to do.
But if he can do those things, this is what you drafted him to be, was to be that Sam backer the times you're going to need that guy. And ultimately, they were drafting him what I thought was going to be, replace Sione Takitaki and that he would also be occasionally your big Mike, except the Browns got a bigger Mike.
Yep.
And Carson Schwarz, who's the biggest linebacker on the team, who doesn't look it in terms of just his build, but he's bigger than everybody else by about 10 pounds.
Yeah. No, he is a big kid. And that's the thing. If you're the Browns, you got Devin Bush on a 1 year. I don't even think it's a guaranteed deal, is it?
No, it is, and that's why he's still here.
Oh, it is guaranteed.
100%. They gave him $3.25 million, and basically he celebrated by getting arrested.
Yeah.
To me, I think if not for that guarantee, I think he would have been cut and they moved on.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Look, when you're playing on a 1 year prove it deal, there's not a lot of wiggle room. You can't make that mistake. So it is going to be interesting to see if he even does return after the suspension, if they waive him or whatever they decide to do. But I'm with you. I like the linebacker room. I like Jerome Baker. He's a little long in the tooth at this point, but he can run. He's a good ball player. I like that.
He's 28.
But it's the NFL. That's ancient.
That's
how it goes.
Tony Grossi asked him if he was thinking about retirement. At 28 years old, he asked him if he's thinking about retirement. Joe Flacco's sitting here chilling at 40, ready to play multiple more years. And Joe Bitonio went from, I'm not sure if I'm going to play anymore, to now he won't even say, I'm only in for this year. Like, he's leaving it open. And he goes to Jerome Baker, 28 years old. He's like, well, you thinking about hanging it up?
Hanging him up. God, gotta love that. Gotta love that. Yeah, it's it happens quick though. All the kids in the locker room call him Unk. He probably feels it, man. That's not easy. That's never easy. I don't know.
But the big question for the defense, if there is a question, it's secondary. It's
free safety.
Denzel Ward apparently fine. Great. Leave him on the shelf for 3 weeks. I'll see you at home when the season kicks off.
Yep.
Greg Newsome allegedly coming, at some point coming back, dealing with whatever he's dealing with, I think shoulder. There's been a lot talked about with slot corner, and a lot of people are panicking and saying the Browns need to get help outside the roster. Okay, my only problem with that, and look, it would not shock me if, as they are currently sitting at second in the waiver priority, that if they make, if they use that to get a corner they like, I don't see an answer coming that's going to step in and start at slot corner. I think they're going to roll with what they're rolling with. Now, Cameron Mitchell's driving me nuts. Cameron Mitchell's driving me nuts because multiple times the Browns are set in super aggressive looks and with like double A gap blitzes, no help inside, no anything. And he's playing off, or on the goal line, he's playing outside leverage when the one thing you have to be worried about, and I can, you can sit here and go, the hindsight is 2020 because they literally ran a slant, but that's the first thing you have to worry about. He was completely out of position. So I understand the concern there. My problem with this is I don't think you're going to find an answer outside the roster because, look, 32 teams need corner, and Miami needs about 5 corners.
Yeah.
So everybody is looking for corner help. Everybody. I mean, this is why I laughed at the notion the Browns were, going to trade Greg Newsome as if, they had the luxury to just get rid of guys.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking for corner help. Now, I'm curious to see if Miles Harden is able to take over that spot because he's a little more physical. And the other guy I think is interesting, unfortunately, has been out in the protocol, and I don't know where he's at in that, is the guy who I think the Browns really like, which is Lamarian James, who, to me, he's 5'9.5". He's 193 pounds. He looks jacked. He looks jacked to the point where he looks taller than 5'9".
Yeah. And
he is not afraid to get downhill, and he sort of reminds me of a Mike Hilton type in terms of maybe the coverage isn't going to be great. But if he's willing to throw his body around, if he's going to come off the line of scrimmage and plant somebody in the backfield, that is sort of the way you take this. Now, the other caveat to this whole thing is I get it. It's preseason. You're seeing a guy get torched to the extent they're really getting torched. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are making it out to be against like Ted McMillan, who's really good. Yeah. But you're not scheming anything. Like they can do things to sort of protect these guys a little bit. So I'm not going to push the panic button, but I'm just not sure I see, even if they bring in more help, that it's going to suddenly fix this problem.
Well, what do you think about Nick Needham? Because that's a guy that's pretty versatile. When he was down here in Miami, he played the slot, he played some safety, he played some outside. It kind of moved him all around, And I mean, not that he's any sort of answer long term in any form, but at least he's a veteran who can play. And he's got the versatility. I think they use him at safety right now. Do they use him inside at all?
This past game, they put him at slot a little bit. I think it was 9 reps. Like everybody got 13, 12, 11, they have been using him at safety, which is where he's got both his hand on the ball both times. He hadn't done anything in 2 years, which is where I sort of went, because of injuries. Maybe we'll see. If it's him, then they're getting rid of one of those younger guys like Mitchell or Harden. I would think they're not predisposed to want to move off those guys for that. But look, bottom line, it's a bottom line business at that point. If he's going to do the job, they need him to do it. So be it. The guy I'm sort of curious about, and it's not that he would play corner in that sense, is Donovan McMillan, who I love. And I've loved since seeing him play. He's 6'2", 205 or whatever, but he's got sub 7 3-cone ability. And they have used him there. Now, listen, that's their 3 safety setup they really like. Do they do something where they can sort of juice that to sort of address it? Maybe on certain things. Ultimately, you're still going to probably want some twitchy little guy that can deal with those guys who are really good, who can turn on, really excellent agility player type receivers that are going to be able to cross you up and do those type of things. So maybe there's a world where that happens. I mean, I think I'm less convicted about any room right now than corner in terms of finding an answer, or I should say, find how that room sort of sorts itself out.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because it's preseason and it's vanilla on both sides of the ball. But I've long been a believer that your pass rush is what's going to make your defense go. If you want your secondary to play better, get after the quarterback. And whatever shortcomings we do have in the secondary, I think will be masked to some degree because of our ability to attack and make things happen up front. I mean, obviously Myles Garrett. I feel like you can plug Myles Garrett on any team in the NFL, and they're instantly going to become a top 10 team and a top 10 pass rush. That's just the impact that he has on the game. So while it sucks that we lost Emerson and that, weakens the boundary and takes, Newsome either back outside or you got to figure out who's going to be the boundary guy if Newsome's going to stay in the slot. But I think they'll be okay. It's just like you can't have many more injuries, and which is why I kind of like the idea of a Nick Needham, the idea of a veteran who's seen a lot of things, seen a lot of schemes, played a lot of ball, But I mean, at the end of the day, man, like you said, there's not a team in the NFL that couldn't use a good corner right now. So if you think we're going to find good long-term answers right now, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the perfect sort of case to study is the Bengals. They have more than enough receivers, more than enough weapons. Are they going to be able to block long enough for it to matter? I'm not convinced they're going to be able to block long enough to matter. So at what point are they going to face a team where that's really a problem? The Ravens, yes, they have twitchy receivers, but they're still based on heavy tight end usage. So that takes a little bit of the burden off of the corner position specifically. And then you can do things like, mix it up with linebackers or safeties in that regard, more likely safeties. The Pittsburgh Steelers are still in search of wide receiver help, and they've got Arthur Smith has collected 15 tight ends. Yep. So once you get out of there, obviously that's where everything starts, the division. Detroit could be a legit problem from that end, but that's a single game. You're going to run into that at some point. You're going to run into a bad matchup, but by and large, do enough teams have enough weapons versus do they have enough protection for their quarterback? And I'm skeptical they're going to be able to do both. I don't know that there are enough teams that are going to be able to do both, or to have the quarterback that can make it happen if to sort of fix protection issues, if they're going to get the ball out quick enough, or if the Browns can sort of press or whatever they're going to do in terms to mess with the timing to give, to make that a problem. So it's very easy to look at it, and everybody's got weaknesses. So you're naturally going to look at it and go, the Browns, this is an issue you've got to work out. I'm with everybody on that one. I'm curious to know how just wide open a wound it's going to feel like during the season. Now, some of that may be fixed by Grant Delpit and presumably Ronnie Hickman behind them. Mm-hmm. Is Carson Schlesinger going to be a big factor in coverage? He looks the part. He's got the range to do it. He's done some things that could help alleviate some of the issues. So we'll see how they sort of deal with the problem. Or, again, you got 3 weeks. Hopefully, one of these guys sort of breaks through and figures it out and locks down that spot.
Yeah. Well, you look at it, at the end of the day, they prepared for this. They drafted Cameron Mitchell. They drafted Miles Harden. Like they've made picks to secure depth in the event of an injury. And we had an injury. It sucks that it's Emerson. And I feel like he got crushed last year when the whole team went on a skid. The whole team wasn't as good as they were the year before. It was top to bottom. It was just a disaster of a year. And people were so quick to turn on Emerson, man. That's a long, tough, rangy kid that was so good in 2023. I thought he was headed straight for a 20-a-year payday. I really did. He looked so good. His coverage grades for PFF were through the roof. I think him, Newsome, and Denzel were all like top 10 or top 5 in like man coverage grades. I just like it sucks that he's hurt, man, but they made moves to reinforce that position,
Well, I mean, I think the big thing for that is Greg Newsome, obviously not the way he wanted it to happen, but he's been sort of, angling for this opportunity basically since Martin Emerson got here and sort of took over that spot. I mean, you go back to the 2021 season when they paired Ward and Newsome up initially, and everybody was of the impression this was going to be a thing for 10 years.
Yep.
And that was the year where, the often maligned Joe Woods, who gets way too much grief, was able to absolutely shut down the Cincinnati Bengals twice. Mm-hmm. And Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward got all kinds of praise, and the Browns did a fantastic job just took everything away from them and dominated those games. Greg Newsome has everything you could possibly want in a man cover corner. Elite measurables, longer than Denzel Ward, has the agility, elite speed, all those things. And he has a kid and all these other things that, maturity and everything hopefully is there. Can he take the torch, run with it, and earn the contract extension and spot that he's sort of been angling for? Can he prove that he was the guy he's always believed himself to be in a pure man scheme than what they had with Martin Emerson? A lot of that was cover 3 stuff because he's press and he's not built to turn and run with everybody. Greg Newsome is. Now he can run with whoever you want. He doesn't necessarily have the physicality that you get with Martin Emerson, which is really valuable when you're going against T. Higgins and DK Metcalf and some of these other guys. But again, Greg Newsome did well T. Higgins initially. And, the guy that sort of got over on Greg Newsome is also got over on Martin Emerson last year, which is Cortland Sutton, who abused both of them. So that's where you can sit there and go, I don't know if he's going to handle big bodies that well. But then again, just Cortland Sutton just killed the Browns when he's played them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the one issue that I think any Browns fan is going to have with Newsome and Ward is they're both smaller guys. They both lack the size that you truly want for a number 1 shutdown guy to be able to run with the DK Metcalfs, the Jamar Chases, and, players of that. But, like you said, though, they can both run. They can both cover. They're not afraid to hit. And they're good ball players. And before Emerson took that position over, we were very comfortable with Greg Newsome. It's just Emerson was a very pleasant surprise. He started making plays right off rip as a rookie. He made plays,
Well, I mean, he came into camp and was so good that they couldn't keep him off the field, which is what you want. I mean, you want talent to force the tough conversations. Martin Emerson was able to do that. They split. Initially, it was Greg Newsome was in on the boundary when they were two corners. Martin Emerson came in and then kicked Greg Newsome inside. And then the next year it was Martin Emerson's just that guy, and we're going to leave Greg Newsome full-time in the slot. So we'll see if that part of it improves. I think that's the other part that becomes interesting to sort of figure out is if Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome are as good as they can be, are these safeties now potentially an opportunity? Well, it's almost never Grant Delpit because he's always manning up a tight end. Is there a free safety? Is there an underneath linebacker that can sort of be peeking that slot that's going to be able to suddenly help out or make plays on the ball? And that's where the turnovers are going to come that they haven't gotten. They can trust those corners to sort of do their job and take away that stuff so they can use more of their personnel to help out in the middle of the field or wherever it is that they can sort of say, Denzel's got his guy. Maybe Greg Newsome's going to need a little help. Hopefully he doesn't. But because Denzel Ward is so good, we can always trust him to take care of his matchup and then focus the attention to help everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's ultimately what they're going to have to do. You know, it's all going to start up front, but they've got the skill set and the athleticism at linebacker and at safety that they can do that sort of thing. You know, and if you're strong at corner, you'll be okay. You know, but Harden and Mitchell stepping up is needed. Hopefully Needham can be something. And then was James is he still hurt? Is he back yet?
Who?
James, the corner?
I don't know. I mean, last I knew he was in the concussion protocol. I don't know if he's out yet or not.
Okay. So going back to the defensive line, this is without question the most impressive depth I've ever seen on a Cleveland defense. For the defensive line, I feel like there's legitimately 12 guys that like I'd be okay with them keeping, you know, between D tackle and D end.
Yes, I think 2023 was weird and interesting because you got lightning in a bottle with Maurice Hurst.
Mm-hmm.
It was great for what he was, but there were like sort of, you know, dead spots, you know, and this is still something they have to prove. If Myles Garrett is off the field, does the defense feel entirely different? I mean, Myles Garrett,
it does
in the same way that J.J. Watt did when he was playing. Franchise quarterback effect on your defense. He changes the whole thing.
Yep.
And anytime he's missed time or is just catching his breath or, you know, sneezes, the defense tends to falter without him. So much of this comes down to the defensive tackle position, which is easily the most talented since Schwarz has been here, and he specifically made it that way. You used a fifth pick on Mason Graham. You had Mike Hall and Juwan Briggs, who both looked really impressive down the stretch. Obviously, Hall's going to come back healthy and hit the ground running. There's every reason to believe he can based on what he showed, because the thing that jumped out with me with Hall last year wasn't his pass rush. I knew he could do that. It was for a 21 years old, how effective he was at run defense. I thought that was going to be challenging because you're dealing with grown-ass men with mortgages and kids.
He's explosive. He
flies off the ball, but you're just sitting there and there were numbers for this where when he was on the field and like him and Juwan Briggs, suddenly the opponent rushing average dropped to like well below where they had been all season. Like it was clearly the best they had during that season, and you know, opponents may vary and all that stuff, but they were better, notably better. You add Mason Graham on top of that. You trade out Dalvin Tomlinson, who's different. He's a nose. Mm-hmm. You're trading him out for Malik Collins, who's a 3. That's a different deal. You're hoping that Mason Graham, as a different type of nose, is going to be an impact player. I mean, you know, perfect world, he's Quinnen Williams or something along those lines. Given where he's picked, or you know, Marcel Darius, I would sign up for that. You've got Juwan Briggs. That's just your defensive tackles, and then you get in this weird spot where you have Shelby Harris, who just celebrated his 34th year old birthday. He has been good for the Browns for 2 years. Like it's not like
solid.
Shelby Harris has been showing his age. He has been more than effective for 2 years. The problem I see, I don't know where his snaps are coming from at this point, as long as Hall and Graham and Collins and Briggs are active. And I can't help but think that the Browns are ultimately going to come to him and say, listen, you've been great. We're going to go ahead and cut you and let you pick where you're going to go. And he will play for a football team and help a football team. I cannot stress this enough. He is a good football player.
Yep.
That is where the Browns are. And I think the reason they will do that is twofold. One, he's 34 years old. And even if he plays this year and he's good again, which he well could be, I don't know where the snaps are coming from, short of an injury, which obviously would be an argument to keep him.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have to look for a replacement, some form or fashion. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily use another first or second round pick to do that, but nevertheless, you're going to have to replace that spot. And then the other thing that works against him, and only slightly, he has 2 special team snaps in 2 years for this team. He's been on field goal block twice.
Yeah.
So the conversation then becomes, well, what does your edge room look like? And I think this is a third thing that sort of potentially works against him.
Huntington.
Isaiah McGuire and Myles Garrett, obviously entrenched. Alex Wright, yes, they're using him in end, but they love to kick him inside. So it's more snaps potentially going away from a defensive tackle that are there. So then you get to Joe Tryon. He's a pure edge. And then I continue to be of the belief that they're going to keep Aiden Huntington. I cannot fathom that they're going to say, we're going to let this kid go thinking he's get the practice squad, because I think they will, short of him getting hurt or something, I don't think they'll ever see him again. I think he will get claimed. Somebody will take him and just say, we're going to, I could see a team like Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders would be all over him, because that's the type of player he likes.
Mm-hmm.
He kicks inside a lot too. He's technically listed in edge. I never see him play edge. I've only seen him sort of play outside the tackle or on the tackle when they get like a 50 front. So that's another guy that does it. And he's on special teams, as I'm watching this 280-pound freak in the kindest way possible. Big tackles on kickoff and punt. And just his explosiveness in terms of, if you measure explosion, it's right there with Myles Garrett. Like, legitimately. It's not like, no, you're just saying that because Myles Garrett is so far ahead of everybody else and he's close. No, he is literally right there in terms of weight, his ability to generate power forward in terms of explosion with jumps and speed is right there. And his agility is not bad either. He's stubby. That works against him, so he doesn't have great long arms, and that can make it tough for him to get off blocks. But he is powerful. Even when he's blocked, granted, he's against back, you're seeing him push the pile. You're seeing him cause problems, and he pursues like a son of a bitch in terms of the backfield at 280 pounds. And this was something he did in his college tape. I'd watch this dude at Tulane go punch the ball out down the field.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a lot. So if you get rid of Shelby Harris and you're sitting there going, man, I've got all these defensive tackles and I've got multiple guys that can kick inside. And obviously Aiden Huntington, a rookie, he's 23 as opposed to 34. You sit there and you go, there's upside here. At this point, I think Cam Thomas is the next guy. And you can look at this past week's performance and say, well, he had a personal foul and an offsides. It wasn't very good. He's still really athletic. He gets off the ball. He still generates a pass rush. They claimed him at the end of last year. He played 64 snaps. 8 of those snaps, he had what PFF grades as a stop. Offensive play designated as failure in 8 out of 64. So 1/8 of the plays he was on the field. Small sample size. I'm not going to say this is something, but it at least got, and he's a kid I really liked out of San Diego State. I really liked him.
He's a 3rd-round pick, wasn't he? I think people sleep on that talent. And, it's like any other position in the NFL. So much of it depends on situation. And maybe he's a perfect fit with Schwartz's defense, man.
Yeah, he is. To me, he is. Now, the other part was funny is I went back and looked at what I said about the time. The Browns had basically just hired his assistant defensive line coach that year. So, and they had done a ton of work on him too. So That was another reason, but he just gets off the ball and goes, and he's on every he seemingly is on every special team in the preseason. So again, that's another element. Him being a pure edge with all the guys we're talking about kicking inside, and maybe I'm going to be entirely wrong for doubting Joe Tryon, or at least saying I haven't seen it. It gives me a little extra peace of mind that I've got another edge in there in case Joe Tryon can't do it. We'll see. Joe Tryon looks the part physically. He looks great as an edge. I've seen the one play where he, got to DTR as Isaiah McGuire also got to DTR.
Yeah.
I want to see it on a more regular basis. And that's largely a product of having gotten a whole lot of snaps and they're not asking him to do a whole lot. They're just saying,
but you want to see him across from Miles too, Right. You want to see him with a true one-on-one situation with the defense at full go and, see which one of these guys can respond. But early returns, I'm intrigued with Tryon Shoyinka. I love what McGuire's become and what he seems to be turning into. And then Alex, right, before he tore the muscle last year, man, he was playing damn well. He was playing really, really good. And that's coming off the heels of a strong 2023. I think they got so much talent on this defensive front, and back to your point about if they were to waive Huntington, they're not going to see him again. They're absolutely not going to see him again. We are so blessed as an NFL franchise with our defensive line talent. I would say 95% of the league is envious, like over the moon envious of what we have. And not every team has the depth. Not every team has the talent. There's no chance he makes it through waivers. None. No.
I think at the end of the day, Jim Schwarz is going to make that decision for them and just say, you're not getting rid of him. Yeah. That was the thing when they signed him initially. I was super high on him. I was super high on Donovan McMillan the second they hired him. And I just thought when they hired Aiden Huntington, he's exactly what Jim Schwarz wants. Don't ask him to stop and think. Just send him forward and let him do what he does. Yep, and it seems to be working. Now, there's not a whole lot of polish there. I don't know if he's ever going to be super polished. But we've seen that type of guy work over and over and over. And I just think Jim Schwarz is going to put his foot down and say, I want him on the football team somehow, some way. I would be stunned if Jacques Césaire is going to say, no, I don't want him. Yeah. So that's where and then you can sort of look at the season overall. And as much as you're going to say, listen, we're trying to win now. We're trying to do all this. We got a 40-year-old quarterback. We're doing this. If you're sitting there, you're not going to give up on 30-plus-year-old players that are decidedly better than what you have. But if it's close, I completely understand going with the younger guy. And to the same point, I don't hate the idea if this is what it comes down to. If they say, look, with Deontay Johnson, and they say, listen, Deontay, we feel better about Jamari Thrash than you right now. If that's where they're at. You're wide receiver 4 at best. And we say, listen, we're moving on for you for the sake of Isaiah Bond since they're guaranteeing that money. Is there a gamble there? Absolutely. But for where this team is right now, I would certainly understand if they say, if it's that close, that they're going to go air for the younger guy and air on the side of the rookies and help turn this roster over faster. I mean, to the overall point of the draft, which everybody felt for the most part good about. Say we can nitpick and say Dillon Gabriel, fine. I'm there with you. But if you just went with Graham and Schlesinger and then Quinshon Judkins before he got trouble, and ultimately at some point he will be on the field again and hopefully soon and good. Harold Fannin, Dylan Sampson and Shedeur Sanders, and then you sit there and you go, and they've got Aiden Huntington, and they've got Donovan McMillan, and now
Isaiah Bond.
Whatever he's going to end up become Isaiah Bond, that the Browns, and this is where I sort of look at this and I say they've done this before. The Browns have done, and this is a tactic I applaud them for. They did this starting in 2023, where they basically, in that year, they drafted all premium positions save for center and Siaki Ika, and Luke Whipler looks great, by the way. The 2023 draft, from a process standpoint, I have every reason to believe this draft will be better on talent. Look, they had the fifth pick of the draft. They had an extra second round pick. But from a process standpoint, 2023 was the gold standard. And part of the reason it was the gold standard was because they left roster holes at a couple spots, safety and linebacker. And so when they got through the draft, they then got to say to undrafted rookies, hey, we've got a job here for you to come here. This is a really attractive situation for you. You can see how you make this team. So they signed Ronnie Hickman. They signed Tanner McAllister, that both Ohio State safeties. Ultimately, Ronnie Hickman won that job. They signed Mahmoud Diabate and Charlie Thomas III, who I really liked out of Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Mahmoud Diabate won that job. And all of a sudden, you got 2 extra players from that draft who are contributing, and you extend the reach of your draft. It's a very convoluted strategy, and that may work out for them, and they may look brilliant if they played the super long game with Isaiah Bond. And I'm not going to pretend that if there was a receiver they absolutely loved, they weren't going to say, Andrew Berry wasn't going to go, no, check this out. We're going to take this because I'm playing the long game. But it just so happens that they sort of, the way the draft played itself out and the way they picked players, it allowed for Isaiah Bond to now be a situation where Isaiah Bond goes, one, they cultivated this relationship, all this stuff, and the agent has nothing but praise for the Browns, that they played this to a circumstance where they have a roster spot and be able to say, hey, this is a great opportunity for you. So now we get all those guys, Donovan McMillan, Aiden Huntington, Isaiah Bond, and all of a sudden, if, let's say, one of those 3 guys you got as an undrafted free agent is good, great, you extend it. And that's not including Lamarian James. That's not including some of the other guys they brought. I'm just naming those 3. That is where I understand where people are mad at Andrew Berry and how he drafts, even though I think he's basically average. I think he's basically dead ass average. It's the margins he's working on that allow you to win. Because if we get through this season and Ronnie Hickman gets signed to an extension of some sort, if Mahmoud Diabate is just signed to another year, it's going to extend that 2023 draft and make it look good. When we're sitting here talking about DeJuan Jones starting the left tackle, we're talking about Cedric Tillman starting at the X receiver. We're talking about Isaiah McGuire as a potential breakout player. Luke Whippler looks like he might be the team's next center next year.
He does. He looks fantastic.
It's been outstanding. That a draft that you didn't pick until the 3rd round, and we're talking about how much you were able to get because of a smart strategy and how you picked your players.
Yep. And it's funny because Barry gets crushed. Barry gets crushed. Obviously, the Deshaun trade, the Jedrick Wills over Tristan Wirfs, I think is gonna, be a thorn in the Browns fans' side.
The shot at the time. I'm like, boom, walk it off, Tristan Wirfs, and they go, Jedrick Wills, and I'm just like, oh my god.
It's, and that's the thing that didn't make sense to me too, is that I feel like the analytical darling in that was Wirfs. He's the phenomenal athlete. Like yes. I just. Either way, this is, we're rehashing ex-girlfriends we don't need to talk about. No big deal, But you take away the fact that he missed on Wills and then didn't have a first-round pick for 3 years. He did pretty damn good. 2023 is obviously the one that you plant your flag and be like, this guy knows what he's doing. He absolutely does.
Look, I will continue to say this. Like, all I want from draft picks is hit the baseball. You want at bats, and you want your guy to hit the ball hard. Some of them are going to go right to fielders, but eventually you're going to get on a hot streak, and those balls are going to start going where you want them, whether it's the gap or over the fence. As long as you hit the ball hard. Siaki Ika, notable exception. You did not hit the ball hard. Stop letting Jim Schwartz make picks.
Yeah.
Luke Whippler, you hit the ball hard, even though he's a center.
I'll never understand that one.
Hit the ball hard. All these other guys, you sit there in the draft, you go, even DTR, you can say DTR didn't work out fine. But even in the 5th round for what he did at UCLA, that is an entirely defensible pick.
Yep.
So from a process standpoint, that made sense. Similarly, look, I will criticize the Browns draft process simply from the standpoint of I would prefer premium picks in the 2nd round. But having said, for me, Donovan Ezeraku was the guy I would have taken with one of those picks. Having said that, as much as I can be upset about don't get an edge rusher, get an offensive lineman, get something that you premium pick. Again, Carson Schwarzenegger looked exactly like I want the 33rd pick in the draft to look like if he's a linebacker. I hope he stays healthy and can play for, how long did Clay Matthews play? 35 years. I hope that can happen. If the Quinshon Judkins one's the easiest one to punch now, and I don't know what that is going to end up with, but like. Again, that's where I prefer a premium pick. But if he's good,
if he's good, nobody's going to care.
Still defend Kareem Hunt to the hilt, even though you saw it on tape, and there are people still mad about Kareem Hunt's average to mediocre rushing average still not being on team now. So if he can play, that's good. But like Mason Graham, excellent process. Harold Fannin, excellent process. Shedeur Sanders, incredible process. Dillon Sampson was a really good process. Yep. And then the other guys that we talked about, that's where. Eventually, they're going to string a bunch of hits together. Or, obviously, the quarterback's going to determine this whole thing. If they don't find the quarterback, they're not going to be here. But that's where I'm able to sit there and look at it. I can defend Barry's process and how he's done these things.
Yeah. Well, it's tough, too, with quarterback because not everything's created equal when it comes to the quarterback position. Just because you have a top 5 pick doesn't mean there's a quarterback worthy of that selection. It's just there's so many moving parts with that position, and you need to get lucky in as many ways as you need to be good at your process. So it's really tough to, say this, that, and the other about the quarterback position. But if you look at the Browns being a quarterback away, and they're legitimately a quarterback away. They have good players across the board. If you put a high-level quarterback, whether you take any of the top 8 to 12 quarterbacks in the NFL, if you put them on this Cleveland Browns team, we're a problem. And we're a problem that people are talking about being a playoff, not just contender, a playoff favorite. If you had a quarterback that could put up 25 to 30 points a game, who the hell's going to beat this team with that defense? Who is going to be able to do anything against this defense if you're playing from behind and you're one-dimensional and they know you have to throw? So, I get it, man. I get the gamble on Deshaun because granted, it's expensive. It's this and that, whether it's the draft picks or the money. If you get a just game-altering player at that position, that's it. That's all that matters. And this defense is good enough to be a Super Bowl defense if the offense could match up to it. You have to.
Even with Jaden Daniels, they were picked to finish last and NFC Championship. Now, I think there's going to be a correction this year, but nevertheless.
So do I.
That doesn't change the fact that he was able to get them to the NFC Championship in 1 year because he was that good. And that's the other part of the whole quarterback debate of, look, I understand why you want to see, for the 3 people who want to see Dillon Gabriel succeed, you want to see that part go out, or you want to see how good Shedeur can be. Ultimately, your goal is get a Jaden Daniels for you. And if you're not convinced that one of these guys is going to be it in the next 8 months, you're picking somebody almost certainly because you're going to try to get that guy that can do those things. Because if you do it, you're there for years and years and years, and you're not just a random ass Derek Anderson season or whatever that you can consistently get. And I'm not saying Shedeur can't be, although, well, I guess I am saying Shedeur can't be that guy, but nevertheless. That's why it's really hard for me not to already think that they're going to draft a quarterback this year. But, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, the tough thing for a guy like Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel too, in this sense, is that we have, and this is the media, this is the fan base just looking at this season like we need to know what these guys can do. We need to see them play. We need to see Shedeur make starts. We need to see Dillon Gabriel. You need to know what they're capable of doing. But the problem is that we really don't, because at the end of the day, you're talking about a late 3rd round pick. You're talking about, a 5 and a 6 that they packaged together to get Shedeur. The investment is so small on these guys that if they don't get a true look and you bring in somebody else to replace them, honestly, outside of, your feelings being hurt, it really doesn't do much to really alter anything.
Let's take it a step further. Insert quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, Dillon Gabriel quarterback room. I'm excited. Let's go. I want to see that. I want to see them coach all 3 of those guys up and see if one of those 200%. Guys can work out. even if they draft a quarterback, I understand what that means, but like you're going to go with the guy who's great. If one of those guys, we can't look at this as they've got a year to be the greatest quarterback ever.
No, it's unbelievably unfair. And especially Shedeur. Dillon's got a little more, I guess like wiggle in his feet, you could say. But especially Shedeur, who's a pure pocket guy, right? And this goes back to Baker Mayfield. When you can do two things, when the defense has to worry about you running and your ability to throw the ball, there's certain things that they just can't do. They just can't. It's easier for those young guys that have legs and have the wheels to keep the defense on their toes. It's easier for them to come in and make plays and do those things because they can do both of those things. A guy like Baker Mayfield, a guy like Shedeur, who basically sit in the pocket, there's a little mobility there, but they're pocket guys. You know where they're going to be on any given down. The defense can do whatever they want. You can do the elaborate blitzes. You can do all that stuff. You can play man coverage. Like you can do all those things. You can't turn your back to Lamar Jackson. You can't do that to Jalen Hurts. And when a guy like Shedeur, who doesn't have his feet to rely on as a legitimate weapon the defense has to account for, he needs time. And he's never, ever, ever going to be in year one what he's ultimately going to be. So, look, I want to see him play. I really, really do. I just feel like it is an impossibility for either Shedeur or Gabriel to prove that they're the guy and you don't have to take a quarterback next year. It's
the thing that nobody seems to consider is that the Browns draft a quarterback who's not ready to start next year.
Yeah.
Like, let's say the Browns don't finish dead last. I mean, which seems very unlikely to me. I think there are much worse teams. The Browns end up picking somewhere in the middle of the pack, and they pick somebody who's maybe not ready to go. Okay, then one of these other guys is going to have to win the job, and we've seen it in the NFL before. And if if Shedeur is genuinely should have been first and second round pick, he may not give the job back. He may just run with it and never let go. The Drew Brees scenario, where they draft Philip Rivers and you just run with it. So that's the part where I think it's short-sighted to be like, we've got to see what Shedeur has. We've got to see what Shedeur has right away. They know what they have in Shedeur. And again, that's going to evolve and change over the course of this season. But unless the Browns are picking somebody who's and if they do, nobody's going to complain about it. If they pick somebody who's so good that they're right out of the gate going to blow everybody away.
Nobody's going to care.
But if they don't, and it's going to take them time, then Shedeur potentially is going to be the starter next year and go from there.
Yeah. One thing about Shedeur and just this situation in general that I feel like gets, kind of pushed aside. You look at guys, okay, Tim Tebow's probably the number one example, but to a lesser degree, Colin Kaepernick is in there as well. Take all the political stuff aside. But Tebow and Kaepernick have these big spotlights behind them, okay? And the last thing you want is for your backup quarterback to have a bigger spotlight and a bigger fan base and all that stuff than your starting quarterback. It's a distraction. It's not easy for the starter. It's not easy for the starter to have the fan base cheering for the backup every time he throws an interception or something like that. And I feel like Tim Tebow, look, you can say whatever you want about this guy's ability to play quarterback. I don't think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, but I think once upon a time he had a place on an NFL roster, but the juice wasn't worth the squeeze because of all the BS that came with it. And Shedeur's got that following. He has that type of spotlight, but he's a celebrity. He gets shouted out by Morgan Wallen and Lil Wayne and all this stupid stuff, man. But teams don't want that. You don't want all that extra stuff for your backup quarterback. And as soon as they feel, or the NFL in general feels that maybe Shedeur is not a frontline starter, I feel like he's out of the league.
I don't think it's to that point. Largely, and that's largely because of how he handles himself, and that's not a shot at Tim Tebow. I think Tim Tebow is a different animal, and also, his skill set was so specific.
Yes,
beating the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. That's all he could do. Is that one thing?
That's all he ever had to do.
Yeah, and that
made me happy.
Listen, that's Ring of Honor. Anyway,
right?
But like Shedeur Sanders has a far more palatable skill set. It's not like you feel like you're bringing in Tim Tebow and you have to like change your offense.
You have to cater your offense to him.
Yeah, like he can run enough stuff where you sit there and you feel good about it. So I don't think it gets to that point. I think his skill set will carry him for a while, unless he handles himself poorly.
Yeah.
Or the only thing that can sink this thing, and to his credit, he hasn't done it, is if his father gets involved. That's where I think the team sits there and goes, "We're not dealing with this. We're not messing around with this." Until that's the only scenario where I sit there, unless it's off field.
Yeah.
Something he's himself a problem, which we've seen nothing but great attitude, or his father is sort of chirping every week.
Yeah.
I don't think the rest of it matters enough.
Yeah. No, I get that. And to your point, Shedeur's credit, I feel like he has aced everything off the field. I mean, he's been good on the field. He's been solid in camp, and he was solid in the first game. And like I like what I'm seeing with all that. But I've been thoroughly impressed with his media savvy. You know, like you said, he says all the right things. He answers questions in the right way. He's such a laid back, likable kid, you know, and I think he's endeared himself to the locker. I think the locker room really likes him, you know. I feel like the second they feel like he's not the guy, I feel like you almost have to move off though, because of, you know.
Well, I mean, the other possibility in that scenario is that there's an appealing trade, that he shows enough where maybe he's not your guy, but he's somebody else's guy. I mean, those are all. But at this point, I'm sitting here going, you know, they draft a quarterback next year, Shedeur and Dillon, let's roll. I'm excited about that quarterback room in a way where, you know, you can say, well, I wish they didn't draft Dillon Gabriel. Okay, but I'd rather have 3 quarterbacks I'm interested in seeing develop than 2 than 1. Like, this is where take as many swings as you can until you find that guy. They don't have a quarterback. So until they do, they've got to keep swinging.
And they should keep swinging, you know. They should. They rightfully should. And especially, you know, it's a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. And, you know, it makes sense. But you want to see. I'm intrigued to see the guys get a legitimate shot, you know, but it's going to be an interesting season, man. It's a long year. It's lots of wonky stuff that can happen. You know, who knows how healthy everybody's going to be. And I mean, you know, and that's the whole trade thing is interesting. Do you think that they would trade Gabriel? Like, do you think that's a realistic thing, that's something that they would legitimately entertain? And I obviously, if somebody blows them away with an offer, I mean, that's anybody. But like, what do you think it would take for them to move off of Gabriel?
Profit.
Yeah.
I think it has to be profit. I don't think they can take just a 3rd round pick. I don't think certainly they can't take less.
Yeah.
So it's got to be either profit or a player, which more difficult to justify. But let's say, you know, for the sake of argument, let's say somebody's willing to give you a corner that you think is going to solve your slot problem for the sake of getting Dillon Gabriel. I think you can make a case for that. And I'd still expect the Browns, knowing Andrew Berry, would try to include some sort of swap. That's just his move. But ultimately, I think in order to trade Dillon Gabriel now, it's profit.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I feel like they love the kid. I feel like they absolutely love the kid. And so we all saw in the Eagles game, he at least to me, from everything that I've read through camp and the clips that I've seen and the absolute bullshit stats that they've been throwing out for training camp. You see all that stuff, and the media has painted a picture of Gabriel that you didn't see against the Eagles. He was so much better than I thought he was going to be, right? Having said that, like, there's just too many limitations, you know? There's too many limitations with the kid that, like, if you can move off of him and make a profit, like, you do have to do it. If you can get a corner and stuff like that, I don't think the NFL is going to ask for him. I don't think the NFL is going to pay for him. I think the Browns are going to have these guys that they're just going to have to figure it out, you know?
You need a coach who's in trouble to suffer an injury and have to pay a premium.
Yeah.
I don't think that's likely, but that's the scenario where you get blown away with an offer. You know, throw out a name, Mike McDaniel, who needs to win. Mm-hmm. Tua goes down grabbing his knee. You know, they've got
Zach Wilson,
and
Quinn Ewers, your favorite.
Yeah, so that's where I could see, hey, we really need Dillon Gabriel, and I'm not sure my job security, and Chris Greer's not sure about his job security. And
we're not going to be here next year anyway.
Yes. So, when Mike Tomlin is running the Miami Dolphins next year, he can be without the pick as opposed to us. So that's the weird scenario. And look, I'm a fan of taking advantage of those teams anyway. Teams with limited job security and taking away picks they aren't going to be able to use.
Yep. Amen to that. Amen to that. Anything specific that you're looking for this weekend against the Rams? Anything that's going to move the needle for you on the roster, and whether it's fighting for jobs or fighting for roster spots?
I want to see the safety position sort itself out. I really like Donovan McMillan. I'm curious why I could be wrong. I don't think I saw Rayshon Jenkins. I think they basically suspended him for getting rejected the previous week. So if I think they want Chris Edmonds to win that job or one of those spots, I think they want Donovan McMillan to win one of those jobs. Can they do that? And then have three undrafted, guys that they have had undrafted: Ronnie Hickman, Chris Edmonds, and Donovan McMillan round out that room. And then the biggest thing, offensive line wise, other than Luke Whippler, who's been fantastic, can any of the second team guys show consistency? Because a number of them have played really poorly in one game and played really well in the other game. Can I see more consistency? Can I see more reason to believe that if something happens and this comes up because Cornelius Lucas is dealing with an ankle that we don't know the specifics on, if somebody gets hurt, who we asking to go in there? Are they going to be able to do it? So that becomes kind of a big deal for me. I really like Mike Bloomgren as a coach. I really like what I'm seeing from that group as a whole. I think he's doing a good job, but can we get more consistency from that group?
Yeah. How do you like what you've seen from Zach Sinter so far? He didn't play in the first game, but he returned last week.
The thing that stands out with me is he looks slow.
Yeah.
He knows what to do. He knows where he's supposed to go. I don't know if it just looks that way, but it looks slow compared to the other guys that are going. And that's not that one block. He's just doesn't see Jihad Campbell, who's really good on the blitz. It just, in general, some of the run blocking, some of the other things, it just felt like he was slow. He's reasonably strong, but I want to see more foot speed to get to where he needs to be.
Okay. You think he's going to be the starter at right guard next year, or at least one of the guard spots? I mean, you would assume so, right?
I do not. I assume partly because they changed systems back to the other one, and Zach Sinter was more suited for the other side. Now I think the previous system. I thought he was left and a right guard. This system, I think he's right guard only. Mm-hmm. I think he's got a lot to prove in terms of being able to do that, and because I could see a world where either he's ultimately let go, or unlikely this season because I think he's their next man up at center in the case of the third option. And then, but I'm not convinced he's going to be the answer as a starter for next year. I think he's got a lot to prove to be able to make that case.
Okay. No, I mean, well, that's that. Next year is going to be an interesting issue just because of the offensive line issues, tackle especially. I mean, we have DeWand, right? But Lucas is on a 1-year deal, and we got Conklin on the end of his run, right? I mean, they could always, I guess they could re-sign him or extend him, but with his age and his durability issues, I mean, that's, we've been pretty, I mean, well, we got lucky last year, but the year before he was gone for 15 of the 16 games.
Yes, he suffers from a severe allergy when 300-pound people crash into his knee.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's look, I know he's been injured. It's really hard for me to get mad at guys.
Well, I'm not mad at him.
Rotting carcass flies into the side of his body.
Yeah, I'm not mad at him. That's the nature of the beast, though, dude. So, it's not like he's not going to be blocking 300-pounders and be around all.
Look, I think perfect world, the Browns are able to draft a tackle with the first pick, with a quarterback with the first pick and a tackle with the second pick. It still would not shock me if Jack Conklin gets through this year fully healthy. He's not old. No. I think he's just 30. that they re-sign him for another year to allow them to fortify everything else. Now, that is based on an idea that DeJuan Jones is going to lock down that other spot. If he doesn't, one, Jack Conklin can't go anywhere, and they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, they do.
And it might be free agency, it might be whatever. But I feel good about Luke Whippler. Please don't hurt him as being a center. And then it really comes a question of what do you do with those other two guard spots? Is Joe Bitonio going to get through this season really healthy and decide he's back for another year? In which case, so be it. Do they try to sign Wyatt Teller to a stopgap year? I don't know. But ultimately, they've got to get the draft capital rolling to get those guys and fix it. And you know, this year's projected tackle class is outstanding. So this is the year you'd want to get a guy.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think. So Teller, well, how about Tevin Jenkins now? That's a whole nother injury issue in and of itself, but there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of versatility there too. I mean, hell, he was drafted to be Chicago's left tackle.
Right. Could not play dead in the first preseason game. Just the pass protection was a nightmare. I don't know what it was. He seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time virtually every time. And then he was really good the second preseason game. The health is concerning. I think you have to treat him a little bit like Mekhi Becton now, where it's sort of 1 year prove it deals. Now for the Browns right now, I want to use him as a tight end. Let Mike Bloomgren put him as a sixth man on the line of scrimmage, and he can just blow people up because that's what he does. He's never been necessarily a great pass protector, although he played well against Philadelphia. He is a angry run blocker who will blow people up. And if you are trying to establish a running game and try to set a tone, you can put him right outside Jack Conklin and just say, we are running right, do something about it. And that is where I think that could be really interesting. But yeah, I that's why the role I think he's built to play because of the injury situation. If you lose him, you're not heavily invested. But he's one of the guys I was thinking of when I want to see consistency from that second group because there's talent there. But he was, PFF graded him as a 0 pass blocking grade in the first one. So he's got to keep it going. I really like Lorenzo Thompson, the second year kid out of Rhode Island. I just think he's got to get more muscle on him. I think his athleticism is great. I just don't know if he's there in terms of power. We'll see if they keep him as a 10th lineman or if they get rid of a surprise and they keep somebody like him. But that's where I could sort of see them make an interesting choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it makes sense. I'm very intrigued to see how they're going to roll out the quarterbacks to start this game. And I mean, no matter what they do, you're going to hear complaints. Whether it's Dillon first or Shedeur first, the other guy should have gone first. If they rotate every other series, it's going to be too hard for them to get in a rhythm. If they do one half versus the other half, well, one played with the 3s and 4s, one played with the 2s. How do you see them working that out? And what would you ideally see? Because I think we both agree we don't need to see Pickett. That's not going to do anything for us. We want to see the rookies.
Well, what I think they're going to do is if he's healthy, they're going to roll out Pickett because I think they want to see what he does. I think they want to, if for no other reason, I think they want to see if they were right in what he does for them, the reason they acquired him. To me, I want to see the two rookies split it. I don't care how you do it. Flip a coin, give each a half, and let's roll. I don't need to see starters in it at all. I'm interested in development. I'm interested in developing quarterbacks. And to me, quarterback development is worthwhile in the preseason for 2 years. After that, you should be destroying preseason competition, and everybody should be trying to be the next Tanner McKee or whoever it is that is lighting up preseason that no one really cares about after that, because that's sort of what they do. Skylar Thompson is crushing it for the Steelers right now.
Killing it.
Is somebody going to sit there and talk themselves into Skylar Thompson should be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers? I would think not. So that's where I don't care about seeing Kenny Pickett. He had 158.3 quarterback rating, and now he's in Cleveland. Yep. So I just develop young guys. I don't need to see starters in general. I don't think the Rams are going to play starters. I think the Browns camp is getting them ready. I think they're fine for that standpoint. I'm hoping they just say, screw it, especially if for no other reason, Denzel Ward is another wake-up call for why you shouldn't do this. Now, there may be a handful of players, DeJuan Jones, maybe Cedric Tillman, some of these guys, and just numbers that you have to play guys. But by and large, I don't want to see any of these guys out there. I just want to worry about the Bengals.
Yep, I agree with that. Well, we got word that we got a wrap. Pete, it is always a pleasure. This was fantastic. I look forward to doing this with you every Tuesday moving forward.
Should be good, especially if your audio and everything works right from the get-go. It'll be.
I feel like that added to the suspense of everything, and you're welcome, I suppose. But yeah, I should be good to go next week. You never know, though. We'll have some surprises.
All right, take us out.
Yes, sir.